Welcome everybody to Wellness Wednesdays. We are working on lower body stretches for this series today. I'm Dr. Jilian from Awakening Chiropractic, and let's get started. So we're going to focus on stretching all of our leg muscles and our lower back. And a lot of times we find that lower back instability or subluxated patterns in the lower spine come from the fact that we're not stretching our lower limbs. And a lot of us sit all day and we shorten our hip flexors and we're not stretching those muscles enough, and then it pulls on the attachments in the lower back. So I'm going to take you through these stretches quickly. Feel free to pause the video like before and stay in a stretch longer. If you're over 30 years old, you'll want to hold these for at least 60 seconds to notice changes and increases in your flexibility. If you're younger than that, then you can hold these for 30 seconds. So let's get started. The first stretch we're going to work on is stretching the hip flexors. So coming into a small lunge, the key here to stretch the psoas is to keep your torso over your hips here. So once you lean forward, it turns into a really great hip stretch on the opposite leg. But for psoas purposes, we want to keep our torso upright, and you would hold here for 60 seconds. Now to stretch the opposite hip, that's when you can go ahead and bring your hands to the inside of your foot. And if you have more flexibility than this, then you can come down onto your forearms and hang out here for 30 to 60 seconds. And still focusing on this left leg here, to stretch the back of the leg, we can go right into a hamstring stretch. Bringing your heel onto your left heel, toes up to the sky, and then hinging forward at the hips, so not rounding the back, but keeping your back nice and flat. And you can even cycle through a few times, going back and forth until you feel comfortable. But really stretching through the back of the leg. And then switching sides. So stretching the left psoas now, the opposite side, keeping your torso upright. And then working on this hip, we'll bring our hands into instep here. And again, if you have flexibility or more flexibility, then you can come down onto your forearms. And you might notice you're different each side. And then coming into your hamstring stretch, toes to the sky, keeping your back nice and flat, hinging at the hips. And then coming back to your knees. We're going to sink our hips down onto our heels, extending, stretching through the upper and the lower back into child's pose. You can rest your head on the mat. And then coming all the way up, we're going to get a little deeper into our hips. We're going to do what's called double pigeon. So bringing your legs into a cross-legged position, but you're going to stack your ankles and your knees. So if you have a large gap here, or it's uncomfortable, you can get a towel or a blanket to support your knee. And you can do that on this side as well if your knee can't reach the floor. And you can either stay here or you can hinge forward. So hinging forward again, we want to do that with a nice flat back, and don't let your seat come off the floor. Okay, so then you'd want to stay here for about 30 to 60 seconds, depending on what you're looking for. And then obviously switching sides. So again, using some blankets or towels if you need to. Lengthening through your spine and then bending over the legs. Now, as important as it is to stretch the hips, it's also important to stretch your lower back. All of your hip muscles, your hamstrings, and your psoas are attached to the lower back, but we also want to make sure we're focusing on the lower spine. So getting onto our backs, we're going to hug our knees into our chest. And this is a really important exercise that I usually give to patients that have an acute lower back injury because it's gentle and it helps lengthen the lower back muscles. They tend to get very tight if we don't have enough core stability. So this helps to lengthen and stretch them. And to take it further, you can bring your hands to your sides and then let your legs drop to one side without your shoulders leaving the floor, and hold that for about a minute. And then you can do the other side. And again, holding that for about a minute. And then when you're done, coming all the way up, hugging again, and rolling back up to seated. So for some of you, it might be difficult to get on and off the floor or to do these stretches on the floor. So I'm going to show you some examples of what you can do using a chair. So the first one is the pigeon or hip stretch. So we're going to cross our legs just like we would when we're kind of sitting normally. But this time we're going to gently place our hand on our knee and hinge forward again with a nice flat back. And just hold here. And you only go as far as you can go. So if this is as far as you can go, that's just fine. So you'd want to do that on both sides, putting gentle pressure on the knee, just to hold your knee in place, not forcing it, and then hinging forward. And same thing with the hamstring stretch. You can do that on the edge of a chair. Straighten one leg, toes to the sky, and then hinge forward. And try to reach for the toes or the floor. And then switching sides. You can also do a gentle lower back twist in the chair by keeping your knees in line and gently turning to one side, not letting the hips shift in the chair, keeping the hips nice and stable. One side and then the other side. And in order to stretch the hip flexors using the chair, take your chair and turn it around and use it for support as you come into a lunge. And if it doesn't bother your knee, you can either stay here or bring your knee to the floor and use this chair for stability. Or you can stay up on your toes. You can even straighten the front leg and begin to lean towards the chair to stretch and lengthen your hamstrings, your lower back, or the back part of your leg, and switch sides. Lunging here, and then hinging forward, hamstring. So hopefully that gives you some good tools for